Welcome back to another week of The Rebel's Edge, where we finally have Jackson Hole in the rearview mirror. And Jay Powell, yeah, they forced his hand. And we'll have our reaction to that, the market's reaction Friday. And today, is it a hangover or is it just a pause? We'll have more on today's Rebel's Edge. Bang. Welcome, folks. I am Jon Najarian. My brother Pete Najarian, is somewhere near a lake somewhere in Minnesota, I think.
I've been at the fair 3 days out of 4 so far, John. I hit a Thursday, a Friday, a Saturday, a skip Sunday. It's been great, man. We had Old Dominion out there on Thursday night. That was pretty cool. We got more. I'm going to Def Leppard on Tuesday night, so that should be pretty cool. I mean, you know what? The Minnesota State Fair is the biggest and baddest of all of them, John. It's unbelievable. It is a weird thing how incredibly addicted people, including myself, are to the Minnesota State Fair. But it's great. It's fun.
Draws millions of people every year.
Yep.
Not just folks from Minnesota. People fly in from all over for it. So there are some fairs that are slightly bigger, but I don't know if any of them go 10 days like the Minnesota State Fair.
Yeah, there's only one bigger that I am aware of, and it's Texas, but they go 30 days and we do 10. And we do, last year, I think we were a little over 2 million people. There's only 5 million people in the entire state, but 2 million people over 10 days. I think Texas did like 2.5 million people, but it was over 30 days. So, you know, we still consider ourselves the biggest, John.
Well, you should. Well, we're going to dive into post Jackson Hole with Pete Najarian. Federal Reserve Chair Powell, Jay Powell, that is, dovish remarks from Jackson Hole Symposium, certainly influencing markets on Friday, Pete. Everybody now convinced that the Fed is going to move at least twice. And that led to an 800-point rally in the Dow, and then a little easing of that rally today. What's your take?
Yeah, big run, man. I mean, you know, basically up 2% on all the major indices. That's pretty incredible. And we didn't even necessarily close at the actual highs, but we were pretty close to it. So we'll take it at what it was. But an amazing move and totally unexpected by me. I will say that because, John, quite frankly, did I think that he would go out there as open as he was at Jackson Hole to say pretty much what he said, which was, yeah, we're going to be cutting. We're moving things around a little bit. That I think was a surprise. Now the reaction, not a surprise at all, but the fact that he actually was pretty open and upfront and didn't kind of couch it when he got up there. I think that's what really gave the markets that huge lift as we got into Friday.
Yeah, I think he didn't have much choice, really, Pete.
Right.
When it came right down to it, I bet when all the Fed governors were looking each other in the eye, not on a Zoom or anything, I think they just basically spelled out for him, hey, September, we're going to be mutinying unless we all get on the same page here. We'd all rather be on the same page, Jay. And Jay Powell, who famously has been fighting with the president, which is always productive on both people's parts. But I think this might be the move that we've been waiting for, Pete, and it's going to affect mortgage rates. It's going to affect U.S. debt, which is the biggest thing. So thank goodness we're moving in this direction. All right. So somebody sells a ton of Bitcoin this weekend, Pete, and it's one person. How do I know that? It's a wallet. Wallets, unlike when stocks are traded and you don't know who the heck did it, with a wallet holding a whole bunch of Bitcoin, somebody sold 24,000 Bitcoin. That's $2.7 billion. And it's a single investor. So that knocked Bitcoin down, and probably the anticipation of it was pushing Bitcoin already. We were at 114. We traded down to 110. We've recaptured 112. But it shows you that there are some big whales out there, Pete, that are finally starting to lighten up.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see that, John. I mean, some of the biggest bulls are still as bullish as I've ever seen, but nonetheless, it's a pretty interesting move the way they've done that, and it's incredible. And if we're gonna talk about that and the way things moved around and everything else. And today, John, it's interesting to see how the volatility index has kind of been sifting just a little bit lower. We had a spike a little bit. I shouldn't even say a spike. It moved higher into the 16s. And now I'm looking at the volatility index today. We're right back into the 14s. So if we want to call that the range, okay, call it 1440 to up about 1640, something like that. But the 1640 didn't last long at all. And it's been a lot more, it seems like it wants to get even lower by what we're seeing today. So interesting how the markets are kind of shifting around a little bit, how that volatility has kind of pulled back a little bit. And we already documented this, but the volatility index itself that was getting bought in some huge size last week, but they were way out in time and built out that spread that they did. So that's for another time. I don't expect that to be something that's going to probably be in front of us right now. So that's further out, but volatility certainly is getting hit pretty hard today.
Well, and the volumes traded last week, Pete, as you might imagine, folks, because when the Fed chairman comes out and says what he said, there you see the all-time high. That's 52-week high, but the all-time high as well on the left, upper left corner of that. That's basically 102 million contracts.
That's amazing.
The average for August is 61 million, which, as I've said before, is a full year's trading volume when I started in 1981.
Yeah.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it. But then look at this, 79 million on Friday, Pete.
Yep.
That's how heavy it was when people finally got, the word from J-Pow that they're going to be cutting. So that's a huge volume day. And it's at least, I'd say probably, Pete, in the neighborhood of 20 million contracts or more was Jay Powell himself. Not him trading it, but the words that came out of his mouth.
Well,
all right.
And I'll add one last thing to that, John. I mean, what I find amazing about this whole thing is it's August. You're going into Labor Day. You've got all this other stuff going on, and it's the Friday before the Friday of Labor Day. But nonetheless, I mean, people, this is sort of the end of summer, right? So the fact that we got 79 million contracts under those circumstances is amazing. This isn't out in the winter time and nobody's going on a vacation because of this and that and the other. This is the time of year where people sort of step away for a minute. They didn't step away, John, with 79 million contracts trading. That's for sure. No.
And if you want to know how to trade setups like this, folks, by all means, grab the virtual pass to our Rebel Boot Camp, because the Rebel Boot Camp is going to be going on September 19th and 20th. Those tickets sold out really fast. You can still join live. You can still get a copy of it by getting a virtual pass. You can just scan that QR code right there. We're going to have Grant Cardone, Pete Najarian, Mark Lepresti, me, Ryan Mastro, Brian McCormick. I mean, you name it. We've got, I think, 10 different speakers, folks, over these 2 days. You'd like to hear what they have to say, how they set up for trades like the kind we got Friday. Well, grab that virtual pass and you could be one of us. Even though you can't be in the room, it'll feel like you're in the room because we've got Grant Cardone's professional studio quality cameras and audio that are going to be taking care of all of that. And you can join just by scanning the QR code. All right, Pete, Verint. This one, I think we spoke about it because Thoma Bravo, this is one of the many deals these guys wanted to do. And this is basically a call center software maker. And Thoma Bravo says, you know what? We want it. $2 billion, buy it. And look at the volume that traded in there on August 6th, folks. August 6th, 10,700 calls traded. Okay, so that's 454% above average. And then, we get this pop out of the stock. The stock was, 17, 18, and it popped to over 21, pulls back to 20, 25, 20.25, that is. Still a nice pop. And that's why you got to get a little bit of that magic dust, a little bit of the unusual option activity, right, Pete?
Yeah, that UOA, man, it's been unbelievable, John, especially over the last month or so. When you look at the earnings, when you look at what's going on, obviously all the different news stories going on, the tariffs and all of that, Yeah, it's pretty daggone interesting, and I find it to be incredibly interesting in how accurate we've seen with a lot of the volumes. And we were just talking about the size of the volumes. How about the accuracy of a lot of those volumes? I'll tell you this particular company, John, had dropped. It's down 38% in the last year. So I think these guys over at Thoma Bravo, they investigate this, they look into it, they try to understand it as best they can, and they make these acquisitions, and that's what they do. And I'd also point out that I wanted to take a look and see who was the financing on this, because I bring that up all the time, right? The investment banking side of it, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, all the rest. Well, how about this? Jefferies taking a piece of this son of a gun. So $2 billion deal. I think that they get cut a pretty decent check out of that, John. So interesting. I think this goes right back to what we've been talking about, though. Every time we see these acquisitions, these IPOs and all the rest of it, these investment banks are really cranking, continue to crank. And that's why very bullish on the financials still. It doesn't mean there's times where you kind of got to back off, probably. But overall, John, they are crushing it in a lot of different ways. But the investment banking side, absolutely.
Well, how about these two, Pete? Williams Sonoma and W, which is Wayfair, they both reacted harshly to President Trump's announcement that his administration is going to boost domestic manufacturing and imported furniture, which would be sort of both of these two, Pete. He's doing an ongoing investigation into issues, which will conclude in the next 50 days. So a couple of these folks that do import furniture may have been playing a little fast and loose, and the president and his staff are going to be checking into that, Pete, because they want to see that back in North Carolina, where it used to be the king. They used to be the kings of a lot of the furniture that we buy in the U.S. Now, of course, a lot of it comes from Vietnam, Pakistan, China, and so forth. And the president's going after this. So some of the stocks that are exposed in that furniture space taking a hit, Pete.
No, absolutely. And throw in Restoration Hardware is one of them as well, John. But you mentioned it, North Carolina, South Carolina, throw in Michigan too, actually one of the biggest as well. So when you look at all of that, and you can understand the president's got certain targets, right? And I think some of those targets, when you look at China, when you look at Vietnam, and you mentioned a couple other names, but the countries that go out there that are part of this whole thing that are sending these things over, well, he's slapping the tariffs on there, and he's trying to get everything made domestically right here, the home furnishing. I mean, it's what he's been, the goal that he's got as the president. He wants to bring it back to America. And is it going to be easy? No, but at the same time, I think it's something that has to be done. So sometimes there's work that's hard, and this is one of those, but it should be pretty interesting to see how this just kind of keeps on rolling along, John. And you know, Wayfair has had an unbelievably good year. I mean, year to date, John, that stock's up 61%. So wow. They've done really well. Williams Sonoma, not so much. It's done fine. It's up 7%, but you know, Wayfair really on a huge run to the upside. So interesting to see this, what's been going on. And there you go. There's the chart, thing of beauty. But I don't know. Going forward, it's not going to be easy. No one's going to promise this is going to be easy, but I think it's something that the president is he's adamant about the fact that he wants it being back here in America.
Yep. Well, and to the best of his ability, he is trying to drive that, Pete. There's no doubt about that. Take a look at this one now, Keurig Dr Pepper, KDP, because these guys have announced an $18 billion acquisition of JDE Peet's. And JDE Peet's is a Peet's Coffee and so forth, Pete. It's, I can't remember where in Europe, but it's a European-based coffee company that was about a $15 billion company until Keurig Dr Pepper came in and said, we'll take it all for 18. And then they're going to split it off, right, Pete? So tell us about that.
Yeah, they want to split it off. Have just the coffee portion. That's $16 billion, by the way. That's what they've got. And $11 billion on the beverage side. So it's an interesting thing what they're trying to accomplish here, John. And again, I'm going to go right back to it because the more I can pound the table and let people understand how this works, Morgan Stanley and Bank of America are a part of this one. Not a bad deal, John, with $18 billion in the acquisition. They're the investment bankers working on this thing. Not so bad. There's a heck of a lot of synergies that they like. They think over the next couple of years, 3 years, $400 million could be generated from that. So does this one make sense? Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense, but this is a big one. I mean, $18 billion acquisition, that's pretty sizable, but interesting to see. You can see some of the reactions up there. I mean, it's really interesting, but the split is what you and I both kind of looked at it and we were like, that's kind of interesting that they decided to do that. They decided to go to the coffee side of this and the beverage over here. But you know what? They're putting this thing together. I'm sure they've got some good reasons why, or they wouldn't be doing it. But I don't know what all those reasons are at this point.
Well, and so you get Pete's and Keurig and Jacobs. So it's a pure coffee play on that side, pure coffee. So you can go against Starbucks. You can go against Dutch Brothers or whatever. You're going against them on that side. And then on the other side, the beverage side that's not hot beverages, Pete, it's Dr. Pepper, it's 7-Up, it's Canada Dry and so forth. And it seems to make sense the way they're doing it. Now, the issue is always, did they pay too much of a premium to get this deal done, 20 some odd percent? And I'd say it seems like in this market, with the market doing what it's doing and hopefully continuing to move to the upside, people are going to be feeling a little more like spending at some of those coffees. And keep in mind, by the way, that Keurig, of course, is the stuff you buy and brew your own at home. Yeah. Some of the Pete's, of course, as well, but they have a lot of Pete's standalone stores. You don't see too many standalone Keurig stores, Pete. So I'm going to say that this addresses some of the issues that if consumers do get a little smarter and don't want to spend $4 for a cup of coffee, Keurig, and they can spend a heck of a lot less. So I think they hit them on both sides with this trade.
Yep.
All right, one more. Valneva. So this is a French drug maker, and they got the kind of news that's going to drive any company lower in the pharma, biopharma, whatever space, because basically the FDA suspended the license for one of their vaccines. Now, that's not good, because all you got to do is say that, yeah, the FDA doesn't know if this one's safe or whatever, so we're suspending the license. That's going to cause people to step back in a big way from a lot of what Valneva does. So VALN is down over 20% so far today, Pete.
Yeah, basically cutting almost in half, I guess, from where it was, right? I mean, you look at that lower left to the upper right, that's a great looking chart until now. And then, we were up there near 52-week highs. Now it pulled back, substantially, 21%. It's a pretty big pullback, but for all the right reasons. When somebody's got to do something like this, John, and they have to say that this has to happen immediately, they want to suspend this whole thing. That's going to get people pretty worried. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing playing out in front of us. By the way, but if you do go back and you look at what their earnings look like, the revenue was up 38%. Their sales were up 33%. Their cash burn was reduced. So they'd put up really good numbers not too terribly long ago. But this is something that's going to counteract that in a big way. You're already seeing it play out right in front of us, but that stock's getting hit pretty hard. These guys also, John, are out there. They're looking at Lyme disease and that drug and all the different things. So they're scattered all around, and it's a very nice looking company. But when you've got something like this, there is no hesitation for people to say, all right, well, that's not good, I'm out. And that's kind of what we're seeing today. But you know what? Can they come back? They absolutely can, but they're going to have to fix a few things before that happens. And that might take a little bit of time.
It might. I'm not real interested in this one, Pete, until it gets probably into the 8 handle or at least high 7s for me. Yep. Other than that, I'll probably just be looking at other drug stocks for a while. All right. Let's throw it over to Pete with some sports, because we actually had some college football this weekend, even though it was week 0, Pete.
Week 0, and it's pretty exciting from a lot of different standpoints, John, because there are some teams that are ranked playing against other teams that are ranked, and that's something you and I talked about a little bit last week. We can hit a little bit more of that again, but we had the Iowa State-Kansas State game. And Dan Campbell, the head coach at Iowa State, I think the world of this guy. He's a heck of a coach, John. He came, I think he was from Toledo originally, but that game was actually pretty exciting. There was a lot of games actually in the week 0 that were going on. Here's the one that stood out for me, and I'm curious what you think. I think this was a bad idea, by the way, by Stanford. You know what Stanford decided to do? They said, hey, you know what? We're going to kick it all off. We're going to go over to Hawaii and play the guys at the University of Hawaii. Well, they did that, and they ran the ball really well, which is not what Stanford's always been known for. They've always been a passing school and everything else, but they can run the ball pretty well. But they dominated the clock, 36 minutes to 24 minutes, because they were running the football against Hawaii. Here's the problem. They lost. And that is not a good start for a school that's going to be in the ACC again, of course, playing some of the big boys out there, John, like the Clemsons and everybody else. And to start off your season in a game that you're scheduling that because you think you're going to win it, that isn't so good. So they're kicking off 0-1. By the way, Thursday and Friday, we got another 28 games on Thursday and Friday of this week. And on Saturday is the big one. So I figured you and I could kind of kick this one around. Arch Manning going up against Ohio State. Do you think game day might be at this one, John, for Saturday? I'm just figuring maybe if Texas number 1 and Ohio State number 3. Yeah. And I think we're going to hear a lot from our buddies that are sitting up there on the desk. I think there's going to be a lot of fun stuff. But, we talked about this one before, John, the fact that you're number 1 in the country and yet you're going up there as an underdog, which is kind of interesting. I'm still looking at that going, okay, well, Ohio State doesn't really have a proven quarterback. He could end up, whoever they pick, could be great for all we know. But the reality is we got Arch Manning. Everybody's, All-American. Everybody's Heisman Trophy pick. Everybody's this, that, and the other. First pick in the draft kind of a guy. If he's, doesn't stay the full length that he could still stay, he might come out after this year. You never know. He said no, but, I think he can change his mind on that one. That game's going to be fun. What do you think of that game, John? As now that it's closer, does Texas go up there and take it to them? I'm starting to lean on that myself.
They certainly could, Pete. I'll throw out a scenario for you, though, because you've been all over the fact that the 2 quarterbacks at Ohio State are both transfers, Pete.
I don't know if they're transfers. They one of them might be a transfer. I'm not positive on that, so I don't want to say. But
okay, but they all they've got to do is have the smarts to hit that wide receiver, because he might be the best wide receiver in football. So if they create a game plan that they can, whoever the starting quarterback is, throw to that kid a lot, he'll make those big plays. That's something that Texas, of course, is going to try to shut down, probably with double coverage on that kid, because he has to be one of, other than Arch Manning, he has to be one of the leading candidates for Heisman.
Yeah.
So I figure he's got to get double covered. That doesn't mean they can stop him. Double coverage just means you got 2 bodies there. And if he can come up and come down with some big plays, Ohio State's got a real shot. Otherwise, yeah, I'm not very enthused, and I think these guys could win by 8-10 in the shoe. But we'll see. By the way, Pete, I'll throw it out there real quick just because it was so studly.
Sure.
When Iowa State, which, as you accurately said, Iowa State played Kansas, Pete?
Kansas State.
Mm-hmm. Kansas State. That game, I really liked it because the coach basically was 4th and 3, and he could have gone for a field goal, but instead he basically just said, nope, we're going to convert it and run the clock out. And that's a gutsy move when you're basically in the position that they were in Dublin, Ireland, by the way. So they're ahead 24-21. If they go for the field goal, the other guys could still win. K-State could still win, but instead, they said, nope, we're going to run the clock out. We're going to get a first down right here. And they did. That was gutsy.
That's gutsy. There's even more ways we could describe that, but we won't. All right. Next up, John, we got the NFL. So here's what I thought for you, because, I always attach you to Colorado and obviously, the Sanders family and that whole thing, right? So Shiloh got cut by the Buccaneers. Now, I think somebody probably will pick the kid up, but he also, part of the reason, I'm not saying this is all of the reason, but part of the reason was he had a confrontation on the field that didn't go so well, got some flags and everything else, and probably not a very smart move.
Out.
Yeah. So not a great move on his part to put the team into that kind of a position. And, this is preseason and everything else. I mean, everybody knows all the storylines, but he will end up somewhere because I do think he's a talented kid. But he's going to have to prove to somebody that he can keep his cool. And that will be certainly something that anybody who was thinking about getting him or somebody else who actually got him, they'll be watching that really closely. Shedeur is the question mark for me, John. And here's why I say that. There's everybody said, well, he there's even somebody out there, Eric Dickerson, who's saying, you know what? This was all done because they basically said, don't draft Shedeur and blah, 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 blah. I don't know what truth or what not about that whole thing, that storyline. But we do know that there was a strange day that the guy, who's supposed to be one of the top quarterbacks in the draft didn't go till the 5th round. That still is a puzzling thing. But that being said, John, Dillon Gabriel, who went in the 3rd round in front of him from Oregon, is probably the guy. He's not going to be the starter because they're both rookies and whatever. And if they keep Shedeur, which I do think that they will, or if somebody wants to try to trade for him or something like that. But I'll tell you what, Dillon Gabriel reached out and grabbed this thing. He didn't just get handed it just because he was drafted in front of him. When you take a look at what their numbers look like, John, in the preseason and in some of those, where you're going up against another team in the NFL, Dillon Gabriel was 67% of his passes were completed. He was 25 for 37, and Shedeur was about 58%. That's not terrible. I'm not saying that's awful, but, everybody kind of talks about Shedeur, and they kind of lose track of the guy who went in front of him, Dillon Gabriel from Oregon, who's a heck of a quarterback, had a really nice career. I think both these guys will be fighting for it at some point in time. But as of right now, it looks to me like Dillon Gabriel is in front of Shedeur. They got so many quarterbacks on that team right now, John. It's absolutely crazy because they keep getting injuries here, injuries there, bringing in somebody else old, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be a really interesting year for Cleveland. I think they're going to be fun to watch, and there's a lot of reasons to watch with all the Shedeur coverage and everything else, but they got a hell of a defense. They got probably one of the best defensive linemen in all of football, and they've got an offense that can move the ball up and down the field on people. But you know what? We still don't know who the real quarterback is going to be of this team. We really don't. And there are so many on that roster. I know some are injured and all that, but it's unbelievable. What do you think of this? If you're Shedeur, do you want to get traded maybe? Is that a possibility, or what do you do? Because there's teams that are looking for quarterbacks. Vikings are one of them, by the way, right now.
Well, Shedeur didn't look great. Now, granted, he doesn't have the offensive line that the starting quarterback will have when they go week 1. That's a fact. A lot of these guys are trying to make the roster, just like he's trying to make the roster. I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion. Look what happened to his brother. Although his brother might still be on the practice squad, Pete. I saw some of your friends at Fox Sports were saying, yeah, they waived him, but they still like the kid. Yep. And it's, if he clears waivers, we'll put him on the practice squad. So we'll have to see. To your point, though, the way waivers work, folks, you've got 24 hours, I think, right, Pete?
Yep.
And if they pick you up during those 24 hours, your contract is in effect with that new team. If they don't, you're once again a free agent. You could sign anywhere. So he could entertain conversations with Washington or with Detroit or anybody that had a need for a 6th or 7th defensive back, because he doesn't look like a starter right now. I saw what he was doing when he got kicked out of the game against that, what looked like a tight end, Pete, for Buffalo, and they were just punching each other. But, Shiloh was the one that clearly, at least in the clip that I saw, now there could have been some precursor to that clip where the guy jacked Shiloh too. But in that clip, Shiloh was just, the one giving him the business over and over again until finally they went at it, and then the flags went and he's gone. But he could end up at Tampa. I think Shedeur would be better served playing behind Dillon Gabriel for a while. But again, he did not look good in the weekend game. Did not. Um, he was holding the ball too long. He was getting strip sacked, Pete. He was not, but again, it's not the same offensive line that he would have when he plays in games if he breaks into the starting lineup. But that's still a big if.
And you're right about that. You're so right about that. He had 5 sacks. I mean, that should not happen. That means the offensive line was definitely they're 3s against 3s or whatever they are. Maybe they're backups. Maybe they're 2s against 2s and 3s or whatever. But to give up 5 sacks is far too many. And we're talking about Shedeur Sanders, a guy who probably can manipulate himself around in the pocket pretty damn good, pretty athletic guy. And he couldn't, because I saw some of the clips of it. He was just getting too much pressure. So you can't blame him for everything, and everybody loves to do that. But that certainly was something where he was playing behind an offensive line that was a sieve, and he was getting a hell of a lot of pressure on him. That's for sure.
Yeah, he was. It was like the Bears offensive line starters last year. 68 sacks for Caleb Williams. And it wasn't all Caleb's fault.
No.
But that's a lot of sacks, folks.
Yep.
All right. Well, please join us again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And do make sure, folks, that you scan the QR code that Jared puts up there, because if you'd like to join us for the virtual pass to Rebel Boot Camp, the 10X Rebel Boot Camp, September 19th and 20th, you got to scan that QR code, and then you can join us virtually down in Aventura, Florida at Grant Cardone's headquarters. And the man himself will be up on stage with us. I don't know if it's Friday or Saturday, but he'll be there. So if you want to be part of it, grab that virtual pass, and we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.